I have done 30 plus certifications and am here to guide you throughout your certification journey. In this video, we will be covering some important questions of the Microsoft MS-102 exam. You can find the complete PDF of this video and our practice questions through the link down in the description. To the important questions, question 1. You have a Microsoft 365 subscription that contains an Azure AD tenant named Contoso.com. The tenant includes a user named user1. You enable Azure AD identity protection. You need to ensure that user1 can review the list in Azure AD identity protection of users flagged for risk. The solution must use the principle of least privilege. To which role should you add user1? Here in this question, we have to ensure that user 1 can review the list in Azure AD identity protection of users flagged for risk while following the principle of least privilege. As such, we should add user 1 to the security administrator role. Thus, the correct option is C. The risky sign-in reports are available to users in the following roles: Security Administrator, Global Administrator, Security Reader. There are several versions of this question in the exam. The question has three possible correct answers: Security Reader, Security Administrator, Global Administrator. The incorrect answer options you may see on the exam include the following: Service Administrator, Reports Reader, Compliance Administrator. Question 2. You have a Microsoft 365 E5 subscription that has Microsoft Defender for Endpoint integrated with Microsoft Intune. Devices are enrolled to Microsoft Intune and onboarded by using Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. You plan to block devices based on the results of the machine risk score calculated by Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. What should you create first? Here in this question, we want to block devices based on the results of the machine risk score calculated by Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. As such, we should first create a device compliance policy. Thus, the correct option is C. Configure a device compliance policy that takes into consideration the Defender for Endpoint to define if a device is compliant or not compliant. Question 3. Your network contains an Active Directory domain named datum.com that is synced to Azure AD. The domain contains 100 user accounts. The city attribute for all the users is set to the city where the user resides. You need to modify the value of the city attribute to the three-letter airport code of each city. What should you do? Here in this question, based on the given scenario, in order to modify the value of the city attribute to the three-letter airport code for each city, we should, from Windows PowerShell on domain controller, run the get AD user and set AD user cmdlets. Thus, the correct option is A. The get-ad user and set-ad user cmdlets are used to retrieve and modify user accounts in Active Directory. You can use these CMDlets to bulk update the city attribute for all the users in the domain by using a CSV file that contains the mappings of the city names to the airport codes. The user accounts are synced from the on-premise Active Directory to the Microsoft Azure Active Directory. Therefore, the city attribute must be changed in the on-premise AD. Question 4. Your network contains an on-premises Active Directory domain. The domain contains 2000 computers that run Windows 10. You purchase a Microsoft 365 subscription. You implement password hash synchronization and Azure AD seamless single sign-on. You need to ensure that users can use seamless SSO from the Windows 10 computers. What should you do? Here in this question, we need to ensure that users can use seamless SSO from the Windows 10 computers. As such, we should modify the intranet zone settings by using group policy. Thus, the correct option is C. First, open the group policy management editor tool. Edit the group policy that is applied to some or all your users. This example uses default domain policy. Go to user configuration, then policies, then administrative templates, then Windows components, then Internet Explorer, then Internet Control Panel, then security page. Select site to zone assignment list. Question 5. You have a Microsoft 365 subscription that contains more than 2000 guest users. You need to ensure that when guest users are added to Microsoft 365 groups in the subscription, their membership is validated by the group owner every 30 days. What should you configure? Here in this question, based on the given requirements, we should configure access reviews. Thus, the correct option is C. Access review policy can request the owner to check the membership for guest every 30 days. Question 6. You have a Microsoft 365 E5 subscription. You need to create a mail enabled contact. Which portal should you use? Here in this question, we want to create a mail enabled contact. As such, we should use the Exchange Admin Center. Thus, the correct option is D. To create a mail-enabled contact in Microsoft 365, you use the Exchange Admin Center. It is specifically designed to manage email-related objects like mailboxes, contacts, and distribution groups, ensuring seamless email communication within your organization. Question 7. You have a Microsoft 365 E5 subscription that uses Microsoft Defender for Office 365 and contains a user named User1. User emails a product catalog in the PDF format to 300 vendors. Only 200 vendors receive the email message, and user 1 is blocked from sending email until the next day. You need to prevent the issue from reoccurring. What should you configure? Here in this question, in order to prevent this issue from reoccurring, we should configure anti-spam policies. Thus, the correct option is A. The issue occurs because the user exceeded the outbound email limits, potentially triggering spam protection mechanisms. Configuring anti-spam policies can help adjust limits or allow least trusted senders to prevent similar blocks. Question 8. You have a Microsoft 365 subscription. You have a DLP policy that blocks sensitive data from being shared in email messages. You need to modify the policy so that when an email message containing sensitive data is sent to both external and internal recipients, the message is only prevented from being delivered to the external recipients. What should you modify? Here in this question, in order to meet the given requirements, we should modify the policy rule actions. Thus, the correct option is D. You need to adjust the actions taken by the DLP policy when it detects sensitive data. Specifically, you want to allow internal recipients to receive the email while blocking it only for external recipients. This can be achieved by modifying the actions associated with the policy rule. Typically, you would set different actions for internal and external recipients to achieve this. Internal recipients can be allowed to receive the message, while external recipients can be blocked or receive a different notification. Question 9. You have a Microsoft 365 subscription that uses Microsoft Defender for Office 365 and contains a mailbox named Mailbox 1. You plan to use Mailbox 1 to collect and analyze unfiltered email messages. You need to ensure that Defender for Office 365 takes no action on any inbound emails delivered to Mailbox 1. What should you configure? Here in this question, we need to ensure that no action is taken on any inbound email delivered to Mailbox 1. As such, we could configure Mailbox 1 as a SecOps mailbox. Thus, the correct option is C. Configuring Mailbox 1 as a SecOps mailbox ensures that Microsoft Defender for Office 365 bypasses filtering and takes no action on inbound emails, allowing unfiltered messages to be delivered for analysis. Question 10. You have a Microsoft 365 subscription that uses retention policies. You implement a preservation lock on a retention policy that is assigned to all executive users. Which two actions can you perform on the retention policy after you implemented the preservation lock? The two actions that can be performed after we implement the preservation lock are to add locations to the policy and extend the duration of the policy. Thus, the correct options are A and B. Once a preservation lock is implemented, you can only add locations or extend the retention duration. You cannot reduce the duration, remove locations, or disable the policy to ensure compliance and prevent tampering. Question 11. You are testing a DLP policy to protect the sharing of credit card information with external users. During testing, you discover that a user can share credit card information with external users by using email. However, the user is prevented from sharing files that contain credit card information by using Microsoft SharePoint. You need to prevent the user from sharing the credit card information by using email and SharePoint. What should you configure? Here in this question, in order to prevent the user from sharing the information by using email and SharePoint, we should configure the locations of the DLP policy. Thus, the correct option is A. To ensure that the DLP policy applies to both email and SharePoint, you need to configure the locations of the policy to include both services. This ensures consistent enforcement across all platforms. Question 12. You have a Microsoft 365 E5 subscription. The subscription contains users that have the following types of devices: Windows 10, Android, iOS. On which device can you configure the endpoint DLP policies? We can configure the endpoint DLP policies on Windows 10 only. Thus, the correct option is A. Endpoint data loss prevention extends the activity monitoring and protection capabilities of DLP to sensitive items that are physically stored on Windows 10 or 11 and macOS devices. Once devices are onboarded into the Microsoft Purview solutions, the information about what users are doing with sensitive items is made visible in Activity Explorer. You can then enforce protective actions on those items via DLP policies. Question 13. You have a Microsoft 365 E5 tenant. You create an auto labeling policy to encrypt emails that contain a sensitive info type. You specify the locations where the policy will be applied. You need to deploy the policy. What should you do first? Here in this question, we need to deploy the policy. And as such, the first thing that we should do is run the policy in simulation mode. Thus, the correct option is A. Simulation mode is unique to auto labeling policies and woven into the workflow. You cannot automatically label documents and emails until your policy has run at least one simulation. Question 14. You have a Microsoft 365 E5 subscription that contains a user named User1. You create a retention label named Retention1 that is published to all locations. You need to ensure that User1 can label email messages by using Retention1 as soon as possible. Which CMDLET should you run in Microsoft Exchange Online PowerShell? Here in this question, we need to ensure that User1 can label email messages by using Retention1 as soon as possible. As such, we could use the Managed Folder Assistant CMDLET in Microsoft Exchange Online PowerShell. Thus, the correct option is A. The Managed Folder Assistant CMDLET forces the Managed Folder Assistant to process a mailbox immediately. This ensures that the attention label is applied and available for user 1 to label email messages as soon as possible. Question 15. You have a Microsoft 365 E5 subscription that uses Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. From Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, you turn on the Allow or Block File Advanced feature. You need to block users from downloading a file named file1.exe. What should you use? Here in this question, in order to block users from downloading a file named file1.exe, we could use an indicator. Thus, the correct option is B. In Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, you can use indicators to block specific files like file1.exe. Indicators allow you to define rules to allow or block files based on their hash, ensuring the file is blocked across devices. Question 16. You need to notify the manager of the human resource department when a user in the department shares a file or a folder from the department's Microsoft SharePoint site. What should you do? Here in this question, based on the given requirement, we should, from the Microsoft 365 Defender portal, create an alert policy. Thus, the correct option is D. An alert policy can be used to send notifications when certain events occur, such as when a file or folder is shared from a SharePoint site. Question 17. You have a Microsoft 365 subscription. You need to create a DLP policy that is configured to use the set headers action. To which location can the policy be applied? Here in this question, we need to create a DLP policy that is configured to use the set headers action. As such, we should apply this policy at Exchange email. Thus, the correct option is A. The set headers action in DLP policy can only be applied to Exchange email. This action allows modifying email headers to manage message handling or route based on policy conditions. Question 18. You have a Microsoft 365 subscription that uses Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. All the devices in your organization are onboarded to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. You need to ensure that an alert is generated if malicious activity was detected on a device during the last 24 hours. What should you do? Here in this question, we need to ensure that an alert is generated if malicious activity was detected on a device during the last 24 hours. As such, we should, from advanced hunting, create query and a detection rule. Thus, the correct option is C. Advanced hunting allows you to create custom queries to search for specific events in your environment. You can then use these queries to create detection rules that will generate alerts when certain events occur. Question 19. You have a Microsoft 365 E5 subscription. You need to be alerted when Microsoft 365 Defender detects high severity incidents. What should you use? Here in this question, we want to be alerted when Microsoft 365 Defender detects high severity incidents. As such, we should use an alert policy. Thus, the correct option is C. An alert policy is used to send notifications when certain events occur, such as when Microsoft 365 Defender detects a high severity incident. Question 20. You have a Microsoft 365 E5 subscription that uses Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. You plan to perform device discovery and authenticated scans of network devices. You install and register the network scanner on a device named Device 1. What should you do next? Here in this question, we plan to perform device discovery and authenticated scans of network device. As such, our next step should be to create an assessment job. Thus, the correct option is C. Once you have installed and registered the network scanner on device 1, you need to create an assessment job. An assessment job is a scheduled scan of network devices. Question 21. You have a Microsoft 365 E5 tenant. You configure sensitivity labels. You will report that the sensitivity button is unavailable in Microsoft Word for the web. The sensitivity button is available in Microsoft 365 Word. You need to ensure that users can apply the sensitivity labels when they use Word for the web. What should you do? Here in this question, we need to ensure that users can apply the sensitivity labels when they use Word for the web. As such, we should enable sensitivity labels for files in Microsoft SharePoint and OneDrive. Thus, the correct option is A. Enable built-in labeling for supported Office files in SharePoint and OneDrive so that users can apply your sensitivity labels in Office for the web. When this feature is enabled, users see the sensitivity button on the ribbon so they can apply labels and see any applied label name on the status bar. Version 22. You have a Microsoft 365 subscription. You plan to use adoption score and need to ensure that it can obtain device and software metrics. What should you do? Here in this question, we plan to use adoption score and need to ensure that it can obtain device and software metrics. As such, we should enable endpoint analytics. Thus, the correct option is B. To allow adoption score to gather device and software metrics, you need to enable endpoint analytics, which provides insights into device performance and usage across your organization. Version 23. You have a Microsoft 365 E5 tenant. You need to create a policy that will trigger an alert when unusual Microsoft Office 365 usage patterns are detected. What should you use to create the policy? Here in this question, we need to create a policy that will trigger an alert when unusual Microsoft Office 365 usage patterns are detected. As such, we should use the Microsoft Purview Compliance portal to create the policy. Thus, the correct option is B. To create a policy that triggers alerts for unusual Office 365 usage patterns, you should use the Microsoft 365 Defender portal, which includes tools for detecting, investigating, and responding to potential security threats and unusual activity. Version 24. You have a Microsoft 365 E5 subscription. You onboard all devices to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. You need to use Defender for Endpoint to block access to a malicious website at www.contoso.com. Which two actions should you perform? Here in this question, we need to use Defender for Endpoint to block access to a malicious website at www.contoso.com. As such, the two actions that we should perform are to enable custom network indicators and create an indicator. Thus, the correct options are B and D. To block access to a malicious website like www.contoso.com in Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, you should create a custom network indicator to specify the malicious site and then make an indicator to enforce this rule across your device. Version 25. You have a Microsoft 365 subscription that uses Microsoft Defender for Office 365. Built-in protection preset security policy is applied to the subscription, which two policy types will be applied by the built-in protection policy. Here in this question, two policy types that will be applied by the built-in protection policy are safe attachments and safe links. Thus, the correct options are B and C. A built-in protection preset security policy in Microsoft Defender for Office 365 typically applies safe attachments and safe links policies, which help protect users from malicious attachments and links in emails. Question 26. You have a Microsoft 365 E5 subscription. You need to ensure that administrators receive an email when a Microsoft 365 Defender detects a sign-in from a risky IP address. What should you create? Here in this question, we need to ensure that administrators receive an email when Microsoft 365 Defender detects a sign-in from a risky IP address. We should create an alert. Thus, the correct option is B. Question 27. You have a Microsoft 365 tenant that contains a Windows 10 device. The device is onboarded to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. From Microsoft 365 Defender portal, you perform a security investigation. You need to run a PowerShell script on the device to collect forensic information. Which action should you select on the device page? Here in this question, we need to run a PowerShell script on the device to collect forensic information. As such, the action that we should select on the device page is initiate live response session. Thus, the correct option is C. The live response session feature allows you to interactively run scripts and collect forensic information on the device. This option will give you the capability to execute PowerShell scripts and perform other live investigation actions on the device. Question 28. You have a Microsoft 365 E5 subscription. You need to create a mail enabled contact. Which portal should you use? Here in this question, we should use the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. Thus, the correct option is A. Question 29. You have a Microsoft 365 E5 subscription. You create a conditional access policy that blocks access to an app named App 1 when users trigger a high risk sign in event. You need to reduce false positives for impossible travel when the users sign in from the corporate network. What should you configure? Here in this question, in order to reduce false positives for impossible travel, we should configure named locations. Thus, the correct option is C. By configuring named locations, you can specify trusted IP ranges such as your corporate network to reduce false positives for impossible travel scenarios. This ensures that sign ins from known corporate networks are not flagged as high risk events. Question 30. You have a Microsoft 365 E5 subscription. Users have Android or iOS devices and access Microsoft 365 resources from computers that run Windows 11 or Mac OS. You need to implement passwordless authentication. The solution must support all other devices. Which authentication method should you use? Here in this question, we need to implement passwordless authentication, and our solution must support all the devices. As such, the authentication method that we should use is Microsoft Authenticator app. Thus, the correct option is C. These were all the questions for this video. You can find the complete PDF of this video and our practice questions through the link down in the description. We will be publishing more parts to this series in the future, so please make sure to subscribe our channel and press the bell icon. Thank you for watching and stay tuned.